So thanks everybody for attending. And the meeting has started. So with that, why don't we kick it off here, John? So again, thanks everybody, for attending today. I think we've got a really interesting session today. So, it's focused on, FleetCommander reports you should be using. And like anything, as we've talked to a number of you folks in the past and worked with you in the past, one of the things that became apparent is we thought it would be great to have a session that's really just dedicated to reports, how fundamentally, where the data comes from, where things should be used in what areas, what are core reports versus module-based reports, et cetera. So, this session looks to address all of that. And thank you so much for attending today. Like always, and John, next slide, please. Before we begin, again, we're doing this every month from 2 to 3 in the afternoon, the third Wednesday of the month. We really do want your feedback. So if you can, take a minute at the end of this session and click the QR code with your phone. If you prefer, a URL link, please let me know, and I'll be happy to send that out to you. But if you just snap the QR code with your phone, it'll bring you right into the survey as well with your phone's camera. As I mentioned, this is being recorded, and after the webinar, we'll aggregate the content and send out a link to the data, and your mic is muted during the webinar. Okay. Next. Asking questions. So again, if you would, I think a lot of you are familiar with Teams, but fundamentally there's a nice little chat icon in the top ribbon. If you would just click on the chat and enter in your question, and please tell us who you are just in case. All right. And with that, John, I think we're pretty much ready to go. So again,
excellent.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, excellent. Finish up your stuff and I'll jump in.
So as I mentioned, today's agenda is reports you should be using. And really what we're doing is we're trying to walk you on a journey so you can get to actionable analytics. It's all about being able to use the data. So we're going to be talking about that, some best practices, the 2 major report groupings in FleetCommander, which are the core and the module reports, a little bit on, maintaining data integrity and using reports for housekeeping, a discussion about how, bad data impacts the reports, and then any other things that, any other potential issues that impact data integrity. And then at the end of it, we'll entertain questions, but certainly during the presentation, if you have a question, please put it into the chat. All right. Thanks. And John, it's all yours.
Excellent. And thank you, Joe, for that introduction. And thank you, everyone, again, for joining us on our monthly presentation. We're here to help you better understand your FleetCommander and how to use it. And we're really excited, as Joe said, about this presentation, reports that you should be using. What we're doing in this approach is we're actually looking to step you kind of back slightly into the purpose of the reports that are in FleetCommander, where that information is generated from. This is part of the process within implementation and with adoption, where we want to introduce you to these reporting. Some of you may be familiar with some of these reports already, or others that are going through the implementation process right now you'll be learning about these reports soon. But again, we wanted to kind of take this opportunity here to really show you where that information is stored within FleetCommander and the importance of having good information so that the reports that you have are actually that you can use and that can be actionable as you analyze your fleet. So as part of that journey, starting off, a lot of you came to us looking for a solution for all the information that you had regarding your fleet, it was all scattered all over the place. A lot of that information would have been stored, and handwritten notes might have been logged within Excel files, but ultimately there was not a centralized place for you to have your data. And so when you became a client of Agile, part of that process in the onboarding process was us to take that information that was fragmented, take that data that was unorganized, inaccessible, and unusable, and gather it all together in a logical fashion, and then place it within FleetCommander. And really, again, that organization for a lot of you was your primary challenge and the goal for you to get organized. And to help you with that process, what we had with our implementation team is an Excel loader, kind of one last time that you're going to have to rely upon using Excel if you were using it before. And you would take that, your data, and would place it into the columns under the headings and the tabs that we presented there. The general information that we were gathering in regards to your fleet to get your FleetCommander instance up and running was the site information. So you might be operating your fleet from one centralized site, whereas some of you may have multiple sites that you're having to oversee. So we would get that information about the basic sites, how many you're going to be running within your FleetCommander instance. And then in addition to that, the departments that operated from each of those sites, the users that would be part of your of using FleetCommander, and then the assets, the vehicles that you would be using for them to vehicle share, and for you to keep track of if you're using our solution to track assigned vehicles on that. Well, with each of those tabs, that information is stored in a specific portion within FleetCommander. For those that site information, you can find that when you log into FleetCommander, stored under the Configuration Sites tab. So you would click on there, and that's where you would end up finding this screen here that would have a snapshot of the sites that you're managing within FleetCommander. Here we see we had 3 of those sites within this instance. Then you would have the next tab. We would have taken that information that you provided for us within the department tab, and that has a place within FleetCommander likewise. That's under Configuration, User, and Departments. And that portion there, again, you can go in right now and log into your site and go into configure as an enterprise admin, and have that access to click on user and then departments. And you would see all of those departments that you would have within FleetCommander stored within that section. That next tab within the data loader was the user information. Where that resides within FleetCommander is under Manage Users, and you just click on the Manage menu and then drop down to Users, and you could see all at once where that information is stored. Of course, each of those users have their own unique individualized profile, and we'll kind of point out some portions and within those profiles today that you really need to make sure that you maintain that data within there. Otherwise, you're not going to get the full benefit of FleetCommander. Next that we have would have been in the final tab within that data loader was the vehicle tab. In the same fashion as these other information that you provided to us, this too, each of those vehicles have their place where they reside within FleetCommander, and that is, of course, under the similar as the users. This is under the Manage Vehicles. As you click on that section, you can drill down and pull up those records, looking at them at whole from that managed screen, or looking at them as individuals within that. Now, one thing I'd like to point out about these managed screens in particular, and their relationship with reports, really the reports themselves are ways of extracting this data, be it about your vehicles, extracting the data from the managed vehicles portion of FleetCommander, or extracting the data in regards to your users from the managed users portion. Each of these reports just simply allows you to pull that information out in various forms and fashions, and so that you have a tangible data that you can present in a presentation, or it takes it out for you from areas that you can find within FleetCommander themselves. So it's actually taking that data. That's what we want to look at when we're moving the data, so that it's something that's for actionable insights. With within FleetCommander, you're managing your information. Your data is all located in a centralized source. There is the benefit of having a consistent recording of that data with regards to your users and your vehicles and how those are interacting with the reservations that they're making. All that is there easy for you to obtain. It's readily accessible and it can be used immediately from within the reports that we provide to you. It's all because you're maintaining that in a centralized location. And with the data, it allows you to really gain an insight in regards to your operation and the opportunities that you have with your fleet. It helps you to understand the costs and the performance of your fleet. You can see if there is a need for as many vehicles or a vehicle type that you have within your fleet or not, and being able to right size your fleet, or allow you to go and to purchase vehicles that really fulfill a need that you may be missing out because you're having to outsource and bring vehicles in through outside rentals. Ultimately, it helps you with the data to make informed decisions about your KPIs. It allows you to, again, to obtain the highest utilization as you possibly can, and also lower your costs. And really, it drives being the best in class with your performance. So that's the journey, and now we want to present to you so that an understanding of those reports within FleetCommander and how they impact your operations. As Joe kind of alluded to, we really within FleetCommander, you can kind of take the reports that we have and divide them into two major categories. That would be the core reports that we have and those that are related to the modules. So some of you may not be using FleetCommander to keep track of your maintenance or keep track of your fuel. So those are modules, and the reports that are obtained to those modules, those are things that really don't apply to your day-to-day activity. But for the majority of you, what you are keeping track of is in regards to, again, users and how they're using your system, the vehicles that are and assets that are being used during that, and the actual reservations that are made against those assets. And that's really the core reports circle around that, around the vehicles, around the users, statistics in regards to those, and that's utilization. They really provide you those core reports, actionable analytics about your operation. These are really your go-to reports in managing your fleet from day to day, which is why we're saying these are reports that you really need to use and need to be familiar with. Whereas the module reports, those two are important, though which particular reports and which sections of those reports are going to be important to you is based upon, again, the modules that you're using. If you're using FleetCommander to track your maintenance, obviously those maintenance reports are going to be important to you. In the same way, we're keeping track of fuel or risk. Those are going to be important reports for you to be considered and to keep track of. All depends upon, again, the scope of your operation. And so when we look at those reports, the core reports, the ones that really are the key ones are outlined here in bold. They fall under the subcategories in regards to the statistic reports. There's user reports, there's the reservation reports, there's the asset reports. And for those of you that might be using the carpool, that also is a portion there that you can have access to. And of course, you will see these within FleetCommander from your admin dashboard. They're across the top in the horizontal menus. There it's going to say reports. And when you click on that, it's going to drop down and show you each of these major headings, along with the major headings in regards to any of the modules that you may be using and the reports that correspond with those. These reports right here, the ones that are bold, these are really the ones that we, as part of your implementation, as part of your adoption, these are the reports that we will bring to your attention. These are the ones that we will spend time in training, either during the implementation process or during the adoption stages on that. Now, the ones that are in italicized, these really, again, are part of the core reports, but really are more specific in regards to your project scope. It may be that you have no need to do for billing. You don't charge back any of the costs of the reservations. Well, detailed billing is not going to be a report that you're going to be interested in under the reservation reports. However, it may be that you are interested in keeping track of your inspections and your preps and seeing the status of those. Well, that's stored under the asset reports. And so we would, during the implementation process and during adoption, bring these to your attention. And at any point when you're interacting with our implementation team or with Kathy or with Joe as part of adoption and your journey with us with FleetCommander, if you have questions in specific reports, particularly ones that are, that you have might be specific for your operation, reach out to them during your discussions, talk to them and ask them about those reports. Now, the model reports, or as I like to call them, the more reports, as part of the basic training for our clients, these that are in bold are the key ones that are going to be applied within the modules. And then likewise, depending upon if you're going to be keeping track of within maintenance technician hours, if you're going to be taking, you might be introduced then in regards to the summary tech time and summary by categories and on that. These are the main reports. These are the an overview of those reports and what we have within FleetCommander. What we want to do now is kind of break this down and show which reports should you be paying attention to in order to that all your reports come back with the information that you want, and that it's reliable. And this is what we call in regards to maintaining data integrity within FleetCommander. There is from time to time going to need to be some data housekeeping that is applied to your site. As things, when you came to Agile and became one of our clients, within that data loader, we brought in the information regarding your users, regarding your assets, based upon your needs and of your fleet and your understanding of it at that time. But of course, things change and information changes. And from time to time, it's going to be necessary to go back, take a look at your data, and make sure it's still relevant to your operations. So this is the part where really you are checking the base of your fleet data, making sure that is accurate. Because if it's not, if things have changed or it never was put in there originally with accurately, because you really at that time wasn't something that you were necessarily interested in or thought that might be something you wanted to track, then this allows you, through these reports I'm about to show to you, how to go back, kind of hit a reset and make sure things are running smoothly. Because ultimately, as they say, garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have good data in there, what you're going to get back out is not going to be productive. The first one that we want to take a look at in a report that you need to know is the asset data dump. We talked about garbage in, garbage out. This is a way to really take a look at everything that's there and make sure that what you have is accurate. The asset data dump report, it shows all of the information that is found within a vehicle's profile. Of course, that information with a vehicle profile, as we showed earlier, is part of the manage and then vehicles screen. And this report allows you to extract that information in mass from FleetCommander and be able to take a look at that. Now, one thing I do want to point out in regards to making running reports within FleetCommander, there are two ways to have the data, the output of that data. As you kind of see here at near the bottom here, it says report output both as HTML and Excel. What I'm going to be showing you in the screenshots are from an HTML generated showing of that data. However, when you run these reports, and particularly whenever the search results are going to be quite bulky and say that you have 10,000 vehicles or 5,000 users, what you're going to want to do is run this using the Excel portion. It just allows that information to be extracted cleanly and quickly. And on that, otherwise, it's going to take a while for the system, in many cases, to generate those records if you're using the HTML output on that. But within this this interface here, within reports, vehicles, asset data dump, you have the ability to really extract based upon your needs. You can run the report based upon when these vehicles were entered within FleetCommander, when you might have modified them, the time they were first available, last available. You can run them based upon the access groups they're assigned to, various functions, as you can see here. All this allows you to really bring that information out in, like I said, in bulk, or narrow it down to a smaller select group. It may be that you only want to run the report for your vehicles that are assigned for your daily rentals. Well, that would be running the report based upon the usage type daily rental there. Or it may be that you only want to have vehicles that are part of the standard access group. Well, you can uncheck all of these by the deselect all and then simply check standard, and then that's going to bring in just a smaller group of vehicles on that. But as you can see, the results of that report are quite lengthy. Think of it, though, all this information as just a snapshot of that vehicle as that data is presented within FleetCommander. And you can, it's all the information is there, easy for you to sort through. When you have it in an Excel file, you can use the filters to filter down maybe that you want to take a look at. For some reason, only vehicles that are a certain color. Well, you could actually, within Excel, filter out to color or filter out by year those items. So if you didn't filter out those items earlier within the first interaction screen, you can do that with the output on that. And as you can see, there's a lot of information that's found. This is really a continuous line within FleetCommander. I think I actually I ran this report earlier, and you can see how it just goes on and on and on in regards to the information that is pulled out of FleetCommander. Again, that is coming from the manage assets or manage vehicles portion of FleetCommander. Now, we present this to you because with each of this information, it's going to impact other reports within FleetCommander. As we said, if you don't have the right information within your asset, then reports like the statistic reports, the summary reports, the aging by time, aging by miles, motor per usage by assets types, all these things are going to be misrepresented because you don't have your vehicles accurately flagged within FleetCommander. So take, for example, just the basic statistics summary report on that. When you run that report, which is on report statistics and summary, it gives you, again, a quick picture of your fleet within a certain time frame in regards to the vehicles that you have within your fleet, the users that are assigned within FleetCommander. But something in regards to as simple as the number of vehicles that you have of a certain type or class, those numbers can be skewed if you don't have that information accurately recorded within FleetCommander, i.e. Maybe you have a vehicle that's mislabeled in regards to as a car where it really should be listed as a large car instead. Then that's going to impact the interaction, not only with other reports, but it's going to misrepresent the type of vehicles you have in your fleet, the type of vehicles that are available for making reservations. People may be looking for a large car. You don't have one marked as a large car. Well, they're not going to be able to the system is not going to assign it because there's no vehicle indicated like that. The asset data dump report would allow you to quickly go through, and again, filtering, you could find out, well, look, I don't have any vehicles that are marked, or I have a vehicle misidentified on that. That's a quick use of cleaning up that data. Same way in regards to vehicles by location. You may have discovered that you have a vehicle assigned to the wrong location. You may have vehicles that the status of it are mismarked, where you should have more than 60 vehicles that are currently marked with the status available. This will end up showing you that you actually have within the asset data dump, you'll be able to extract that information and make those changes. And then also in regards to the usage types, as we mentioned earlier, vehicles that maybe should be part of the daily or rentals, whereas or the motor pool rentals, and they're maybe not assigned to that. Those asset data dump allows you to correct that. Another report that is impacted in a similar fashion with data that's not accurate within an asset profile is the aging reports that we have within FleetCommander. The aging by time reports. This is going to really show you whenever a vehicle has exceeded the age that you initially expected to keep them within your fleet. This is found under the statistics, again, report statistics, aging by time. You can filter out as you go through the first interface there, which vehicles you want to be part of that report. And when you run that report, what's happening is it's pulling again from out of the asset or the vehicle profile. And what we see a lot of times during implementation is that this is a field that is not filled out within that data loader. And what we end up doing is we just put in industry standards in regards to the expected age in months on that. But 60 months may not be what you intend on having for that particular vehicle. As a result, what's going to happen is that the report that was run from this, extracted from this, is not going to present you with the accurate results that you're wanting to have. And so, by going in, making sure you have a first available date on within each of your vehicles, and then making sure that you have the right expected ages a month per each vehicle or particular class is going to allow you then for this report to be something that is usable to you. The reports on the results on that, it shows what the recommended age is within FleetCommander, within that that asset profile. It then shows you what the actual age is in months. It shows you the difference on that, and then flags it as being under. In the same fashion, it will also show which is over. The aging by time, aging by miles, it's going to be the same thing. Here you're gauging it based upon the expected amount of miles that you're going to have each month, overall expected mileage that you want to have on a vehicle. And when you run this report from report statistics aging by miles, it's going to give you the right, that good information in regards to the age of your vehicles. But again, in the same fashion, if it's not logged properly within the asset profile, then you're going to get report or results that are inaccurate on that. And as you can see, that each of these gives you that information in regards to what was the expected miles or the recommended miles traveled on that versus the actual miles that were traveled on that. So that's just a brief showing the impact on some of the reports in regards to data that is not accurate for your assets. Now, same thing can be said in regards to your users. If your information is for each of your users is not presented properly within their record, then there are reports, there are functions within FleetCommander that are not going to operate properly. The report that kind of mirrors the asset data dump, but for users, is the user detail extra report. This report is found under reports, user detail extra. And this is, again, one of those snapshots that will present to you what the integrity of the data is within each profile. As with all reports, you can determine the range that you're wanting to capture. In this case, the range is based upon when a record was created or when a record might have been modified. On that, you can then decide if you want to narrow it down based upon a particular site, if you want to capture just users that are enabled or disabled, deleted, or pending. That means they have not been approved yet. You can narrow it down based upon access groups if you want to do so. And again, you have that choice of running the report as HTML or Excel. Please, again, choose Excel if you have or are expecting a large output on this. And what ends up happening is, just like with the asset data dump, you got a pretty lengthy amount of information that comes out from each of those profiles. Within that, such things that you can find is in regards to the access groups that are assigned to a person, or the usage types, that status, enabled or disabled. What we find is oftentimes, beyond the impact this has on reports, we find negative impact beginning just within of bad data whenever someone is interacting with FleetCommander to make reservations. What will end up happening is sometimes we'll hear from clients saying, I've got a customer is trying to make a reservation, but they're not able to make a daily rental. Well, it may end up being that it's because there's no usage type that was assigned to them, or that when I go to assign a vehicle to a reservation for this particular client, there's no vehicles that show available. And when we run the user detail extra report and we take a look at it and we go into the profile, we end up realizing that that particular person never had an access group assigned to them. So there was no groups of vehicles that FleetCommander was ever told that this person is actually able to obtain. So this will allow you to troubleshoot some of your problems that you might have just in regards to why reservations can't be made by particular individuals. It may be that the permission level, which is one of the things that is presented at the end of the output. They may have no permissions that have been assigned as part of their profile. So this user detail extra report allows you to really do some troubleshooting well before you ever have the need to run reports. And obviously, if you got users that can't use the system, that's going to ultimately impact your data and what comes across in your reports, because they've never even started the process due to having a profile that has not been completed properly. So along with that, we could find that there are, items like driving restrictions that are found, being eligible for manual assign or auto assign, automatic approval. These are going to impact those makings of reservations. And we're going to see also, particularly in regards to those driving restrictions, how that impacts other reports. Some of the reports that we show here, usage by department is a report that oftentimes is really one that doesn't reflect the proper use of the fleet and the utilization of the fleet by your various departments. And we'll show you that why in just a few moments, as well as also the user report with the invalid driver reports. Specifically in regards to the usage by department report, this report is one that can be run so that you can have a quick breakdown that shows you which departments are using the system, which accounts and cost centers are those being charged to. But in order for that to work, again, those profiles have to be set up properly in order for that to capture that information. This report is one that's found at reports reservations usage by department. And when you run that report, the output here is going to one thing that you would want to keep in mind is the labels here is something that is actually something that you can have customized, as I'm showing here under configure enterprise settings reservations. You can change the labels from our default department label and account label to cost center, if that's a terminology that you use on that. That impacts the reservation, the reports slightly, and just in regards to having some the terminologies, but what's the bigger impact on this is if you don't have within a profile a department assigned to somebody, well, then that person's use of FleetCommander is not going to be assigned, attributed to the proper departments. That seems as a simple statement, of course, but again, it's one that's going to cause a lot of problems if you don't have that information within a profile. So what you would need to do is go in and make that change. Put in the person's department, put in the cost center or the accounting code if that's something that you're going to use. And then that'll allow for when that person makes a reservation, that account number is going to be pulled into the reservation if you have that configured to capture the account number or the cost center. And so then with that information, it'll then be applied to that use, the use by department report. Another report that's impacted negatively by not having the proper information within a user profile would be the invalid driver report. Now, this is a report that really allows you to see the people that should not should not be using your system, not based upon because they don't have permission, because permissions are just how they access FleetCommander, and that they, under normal circumstances, would be one that's considered an appropriate driver, an approved driver. But that can change, as we've said. Status can change in regards to a person, their eligibility, and one thing that can change that is in regards to has their license been suspended? Are there certain driving restrictions? Has their license not even been validated yet? For those of you that are using and tracking those things within FleetCommander, this report is not going to help you out in keeping track of drivers on current and future reservations because you've not captured that information properly within the user profile. And as you see here, it will give you that information in regards to the person, having a valid license. It's not suspended. There's no driving restrictions. But if that person does not have that in their profile, then they're not going to show up at all here on this. So again, you would want to go in and update that information within the Manage User Profile tab on that, and that can be found here. You may notice here that there is not a section that says driving restrictions on there. And the reason for that is that within FleetCommander, you have to have that filled. And even most of the fields that you see here within the user profile and also the asset profiles, you have to have them activated as part during configuration to say we want these particular fields, this particular information to appear within our records. And so if there's things have changed, as we mentioned early on, things change within your fleet from the time that you had onboarded with Agile and FleetCommander, and at that point in time you may have not cared about having driving restrictions noted within and captured within a profile. Well, that can be changed. You can go in and through configuration, enterprise setting, user tab, and click on configurable fields and go back in and start adding that information, those fields, to be captured within the profile, be it an asset here specifically being the user profile. And there's a similar setting within FleetCommander for the asset profiles, but you can see here that right now it was marked as do not show driving restrictions, do not show if there's restrictions, please explain. But that can be activated. You can just simply click on here to make it an editable field, meaning that the information is there and can be captured, or it can be made as a required field, which means that information not only is presented in this instance on the user profile admin side, but before you can even exit out of that profile, you're going to have to fill in that information. That might not be how you want to present it for your admins, but it may be what you want to have as part of the user side. You might remember that from when a person logs into FleetCommander and they're on the welcome page, there is a list of links there on the left-hand side, and one of them is my profile. That is what this is referenced here in the user profile side. It is referencing the that interaction from your driver and requesters, and that interface there. If you wanted them to make sure they provided information to you and cannot go any further within the system, can't leave that screen without filling out that information, well, then in this place here is where you would mark that as required for them. As you can see here, this instance, there's not an example of anything that's particularly required on that, just editable, being presented where they can read it or not even showing it at all. Another report I wanted to take a look at in regards to data integrity and accuracy is the missing mileage report. This is a report that actually allows you to see where mileage is missing. And this one in particular is important because by running this report, you're going to be able to early on, when coming out of implementation and adoption, or even now as you kind of review your fleet, this is going to tell you if reservations are being processed properly in regards to going out and in, if the telematics are actually accurately capturing your mileage for your reservations. This report shows the gaps between the odometer readings on a vehicle, identifies the two back-to-back reservations, and where the end mileage of the first reservation is not matching the starting mileage of the second reservation. That's how that works within the FleetCommander. A asset profile, the mileage that is found within that is based upon the last entry, and most often the case, that last entry that's made is a result of a reservation on that. And if that last mileage that is captured from the previous reservation is going to feed into the asset profile and reside there, and then be extracted out of that and applied to the next reservation when that next reservation is dispatched out. If that end mileage is missing, you're not going to have an accurate start mileage for the next reservation. It'll actually gravitate to the last available mileage, which would have been most likely the last time that vehicle was dispatched out. So this is going to reveal those problems, and that is under the reports reservation missing mileage. And as you can see, it gives you that previous confirmation number and the reservation that followed after that was impacted on that. And you can take a look and ask the question, why is there mileage that's missing? Why in this case was the end mileage here 100,993, but the very next reservation had it start off at 1,001 and 1 mileage on that, a mileage of 8 miles that was missing. Something small like that probably is not going to be raise much concern. Most likely, it may be the situation that if you do have prep activated within FleetCommander and the car went out to be washed or fueled, that the person that's responsible for tracking that information didn't actually enter the mileage, the start mileage for the prep and the end mileage for the prep. Or if you're not tracking prep at all within FleetCommander in the very same situation where the car goes out to be washed or fueled, that's going to cause those mileages to be missing. What you really want to be looking out for, though, is those large mileages where there's a big gap on that, because that might be an indicator that that vehicle actually was driven, maybe across town and somebody took it, and there's no record, no reservation that traces that. You may look at this and go, I understand why that mileage of 94 miles is off, because so-and-so took it and we forgot to put in a reservation for that, but it may be that truly unauthorized use of those vehicles. Well, missing mileage report, this helps you track and stay on top of that information. But then you have those situations where, as we alluded to before, that mileage was not tracked when the vehicle was returned, so that in that instance, the starting mileage of that ends up being, an older record, and so there's missing mileage on that. And this oftentimes happens as a result of, with manual dispatches, that those vehicles were not checked in. Well, what's the whole purpose of this? Why do you want to make sure that you run a missing mileage report? Well, again, it's because it impacts other reports. It impacts it negatively on that. Reservation reports, the summary reports, the details, the extra reports. There's places there within those reports for you to capture mileage, and if it's not there, you're not going to know how much a particular reservation, how many miles they traveled on that. It's going to affect, likewise, the completed reservations. It's going to affect if you're doing billing, and particularly if you're doing billing based upon mileage. The detailed billing report is going to have numbers that are wrong on there because FleetCommander is not properly capturing those mileages. And then with the statistic reports, like those aging by mileage report that we looked at earlier, the utilization by miles, asset mileage reports, these reports are not going to be accurate because you don't have the right mileage in there. Again, garbage in, garbage out. So by running the missing mileage report allows you to capture that. Now, the in regards to this is one of those the asset mileage report that is impacted. I'm going to show you this one. This is actually, as I mentioned before, reports are simply extracting out information that resides someplace within FleetCommander. And what we see right here is the data for a specific 2017 white Ford Focus and the mileage that was placed upon that particular vehicle. That's stored within the asset itself under the mileage tab. And by running the asset mileage report allows you to pull that information out and have it goes based upon the filters that you use on that. And as you can see, it tells you in regards to the source of those mileage. If it was something that was entered during a work order, mileage that was entered during a kiosk dispatch in or out, or during inspection. That's where you're capturing that mileage information. But again, if you're not tracking your mileage for some reason, that's going to cause those problems. This also leads me to kind of our last portion for today in regards to additional issues that affect data integrity. And I'm alluding to it within the idea of missing mileage. It really comes down to improper manual dispatch. We find this and see this oftentimes. For those of you that have a key control system, this is not going to be as big of a problem. But for those of you that are dispatching your vehicles and relying upon a person to check those vehicles out on behalf of the driver and check those vehicles back in within FleetCommander for that driver, this is where those problems are going to arise. Some of the problems that happen is that that'll affect the data integrity of your fleet is simply not dispatching vehicles out. You oftentimes see that happen for some reason. The clients just choose not to actually dispatch their vehicles in and out. So there's a lot of reservations that are out there within the system. A lot of them that showed be late for departure, and it's because a reservation was entered, the car actually was picked up, but for some reason they were never manual dispatched out. That a lot of times will lead to the next problem that will cause data integrity problems in regards to canceling undispatched reservations. Now, before we initiated automatic cancellations, which is a configuration that if you're not familiar with, you can talk to support, talk to client success next time you're working with them. But the mass bulk cancellations would get rid of any reservations that were not picked up after X amount of minutes after a reservation was scheduled to start. But if you don't have that activated, then you may be canceling reservations just manually on that. But either case, whenever those cancellations occurs, particularly with those automatic cancellations, that's going to impact you're going to lose the any type of data that you had on a reservation that could have been usable. Going back and redispatching those reservations, capturing those times, going back and putting in when they were picked up, when they were returned. Because once a reservation is canceled in FleetCommander, you can't reactivate it. So at that point, you really have lost that information in all practical sense. And the other portion in regards to improper dispatching is using reserve time and not the actual time on those dispatches. The manual dispatch we're talking about is this screen. You can get to this portion from the dashboard. You click on a reservation from the sections of reservations that are going out, and then it'll end up allows you to choose in this particular screenshot here if a reservation is going out on the actual time or the reserve time. By clicking on the clock here, what happens, it fills in the blank here on the actual time in the moment. If you were to click on R, it will go with this date and time that's up here as the start date, and same with the return date, date and time on that. There may be some instances that using the reserve time, like off-hour departures, where you just basically have to trust that they are picking up the vehicle and returning it at the time that they said, may be what you do. But for all intents and purposes, best practice is with manual dispatches, always use the actual time for more accurate data. And what that does is it will impact, again, your other reports. Date and time that is not accurate, reservations that are canceled, reservations like that are going to impact statistics reports like the usage, the motor pool utilization, the MPU by assets type. It's going to impact your reservation reports like completed reservations, late return, cancellations, and hoarding reports. And in our last portion right here, I want to just introduce you again to, if you've not been introduced to hoarding reports, I want to show you that, because this is probably one of my favorite reports within FleetCommander in regards to how a fleet is used. This helps identify reservations that are made longer than really that they were utilized for. This includes vehicles that are picked up late. Those ones where keys were picked up, but the trip actually didn't start until hours later. And also reservations that are reserved for a full day, but truly are only used for a shorter period of time. The report's reservation hoarding report is where you would go to start this process. And why would you want to use this report? Because users don't always accurately or give you the information about when they're going to use a vehicle. Sometimes they're even worse, they're misleading about their needs on that. An example of that would end up being, that somebody makes a reservation from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on that. However, they actually start the reservation at 10 a.m. They return it at 6 p.m. And through telematics or just word of, or through the grapevine, you find out they really did not leave their office with that vehicle until 1 p.m. and then they returned at 2. The vehicle was blocked for a total of 10 hours. But in the course of the day, it was used for only 1. The hoarding report helps you identify those problems and helps you to eliminate those problems with proper policy enforcement. It really keeps those documents when people monopolize fleet assets. So it's filled with information. It shows you when a reservation was scheduled to start, when it was actually picked up. It shows you when it was scheduled to end, when it actually is picked up, the duration and the difference from what was scheduled and what was the actual, the difference between those, and also captures the late for time and minutes for pickup and also for return. However, that report, again, is not going to be accurate for those of you that are using manual dispatch and not dispatching vehicles at all, or dispatching vehicles on that. For the rest of you that use telematics, this is another added benefit on that, is that you could actually drill down and capture that middle section totally without the word of mouth through the grapevine, you can actually see through telematics that a reservation of a vehicle was actually not used. But overall, the report's still helpful, even without telematics on that. And with that information, shows you the major reports that you want to use to check the data integrity that you have within FleetCommander, the asset data dump for your vehicles, the user extra detail report for your users, the missing mileage report, just to see if your dispatching is being done properly on that and how that impacts multiple of these reports and others that we didn't cover today. That is what I have for my presentation. Joe, do you want me to finish it out, or do you want?
Well, I just want to make just two real quick comments, John, and that is, you had mentioned, as you're talking about things like months on service and miles, and it's real important that when if you're using FleetCommander and you are doing things with total cost of ownership, that those data models also use that data. So it's real important that when you start looking at the data to have sound underlying data. Otherwise, you're going to get skewed results when you start doing calculations. So that's kind of another really important piece of it. We had a couple of questions. So
I see them.
Yes. So Kella basically asked the question about license, whether a license is validated and then license suspended. But fundamentally, those are independent tick boxes.
Right.
So best practice is to really make sure you validate the license, and then based on your due diligence, if you do have a situation where somebody gets suspended, you tick that box, and then that prevents checkout at the kiosk. So that's cool. And then Melanie just came back with a question, and she asked, do I understand correctly that mileage is not tracked by the system unless the vehicle's in use via a reservation? So there's kind of a couple of situations there, Melanie, and that is, if you are using telematics, the telematics will send data on a periodic basis. Typically, it's based on ignition on and off events, but it does send additional data outside of the reservation process. Any other thoughts or comments on that you want to add?
Yes, actually, there was a screen that I showed within the vehicle profile, that mileage tab. And as Joe mentioned, vehicle ignition on and off is a way telematics of updating mileage within FleetCommander, but there's also other sources. There's when mileage is entered on a work order. If you're using our maintenance module, it's going to track within the mileage tab within that vehicle's profile, and thus that's going to update then any reservations and impact that. There is just a manual. You can type that in within the profile itself. If you're using the system to track assigned vehicles, there is a portion within FleetCommander where you can send out an email and have them log into FleetCommander and go to that from the welcome screen, go to the link that says My Vehicle, and there's a listing there of the vehicles that person is responsible for tracking their mileage. When they put the mileage in there, it's tracked. So the most common portion of it is that impact from just the dispatching in and out, either through manual dispatch or through key control, but there's multiple other ways to track that mileage within FleetCommander. So there's another. I
think there's two more questions. Why don't you do those?
Let's see here.
Melanie asked a follow-on question about mileage.
So thanks. My question was in reference to the missing mileage report. One of the reasons given as to why mileage is missing was car wash, etc. So why wouldn't that mileage have been tracked? Yes, what that is again, in the similar fashion that the person who checked the vehicle in on a manual dispatch did not put in the end mileage on it. The same thing would be impacted whenever someone who is assigned as a for prep, assigned to prep the vehicle, that they were presented with that opportunity, they actually didn't fill that out. that happened a lot with my fleet, with the car wash attendants on that. They did not go into FleetCommander on some occasions and fill that out. So there'd be that little bit of gap there as a result. But had they actually updated like they're supposed to, then that gap would not have been missing. And it looks like that answered your question. So, and I don't see, was there any other questions that I'm missing here, Joe?
No, I think that may have been it, John. Walter's going to reach out to me after the fact, and we'll see what's going on with whether he's missing a report or missing something in his setup.
Excellent. All right. Well, then you want to run through have you run through the last screens here?
Well, you can or I can. I mean, if you want me to take it, that's fine. So, fundamentally, John, really wonderful job today. I hope everybody got the value out of this. I apologize, we're a little bit long on the time, but John did a really great job of kind of walking people through the importance of having solid data in the system. Something I think we can all appreciate, how that drives the reports, how that drives the operation of the system, and it really leads to good analytics. So you can actually use it to make decisions, and that's what it's all about, is getting value out of the system. From our standpoint, at Agile and FleetCommander, obviously we want to make sure that you folks are all happy with the system. So if you do need any assistance with implementing, new features, and again, things like total cost of ownership, and we like to think about total cost of ownership as non-maintenance, non-fuel. So if you are using FleetCommander for some of these functions, it's great to set it up where you can track a lot of these other expenses related to a vehicle. If you think about, you doing replacement fund or applying insurance overheads or operational overheads, it's great to calculate those out so that you can get some real value and figure out what your fleet is really costing you. So we're happy to help you set those things up, and those are included in the base Fleet Commander at this point. Other questions. So I think that we've got really a cadre of folks that are well versed in the fleet industry. So if you have questions about your fleet policy, fleet operations, what should I, we're just even bouncing questions off about what do you think about this. Feel free to reach out to us. We've got great knowledge bases, and even if we don't know the answer, we can find it out for you. So happy to help you out in any case there. Training is a big item. Lots of clients are coming back to us these days with training because, frankly, some clients are just coming back in the office. And so, the activity is spooling up. And if you need any help there, happy to set something up and walk you through it. And, just again, thinking about, from a billing standpoint, we've introduced some new standard algorithms in the system. So if you do have the need or want to explore billing, something we should talk about. In automation, again, there's nothing better than automation. I know there's a cost to it, but fundamentally there's an exceptional payback to it as well, because it reduces time. So it reduces your staff time. It lets them focus on the value added work instead of trying to figure out who has the key. So those are really great things to look at. And John, if you want to hit the next slide, again, next month, we're going to be back to basics. So again, the mid, as we get into, the mid-month of the quarter, we're going to be, doing kind of the hands-on of FleetCommander, and this is going to be the admin interface, so making and managing reservations. So I think that'll be a really great topic. It tends to be a good topic from a training standpoint. A lot of folks are interested in it, and it really gives them that capability to effectively manage their reservation activity. And then, lastly, I think we've go ahead, John, you can move to the next slide. User conference. So, the 2023 user conference is coming up fast. We hope we'll see some of you there. It's going to be in lovely Knoxville, Tennessee. Sammy, I think, is on the meeting today. Sammy is going to be our host, and Sammy's with the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, runs an exceptional fleet there. So hopefully we'll see some of you folks there, and, you folks can all meet Sammy as well. And I think it'll be a really wonderful time. And I think that may be it. How could I forget? You got to give us some feedback. So I've been looking at our participation rate for Workshop Wednesdays, and we're not getting a lot of feedback. So please, oh please, take a minute, snap the QR code. It brings you right into the survey. Give us your thoughts. We would really appreciate it. And again, this is all for you at the end of the day. So your feedback helps us design content for the future. So anything you can do to help us out here is really appreciated. So thank you so much for doing that. And that's it.
And I thank you likewise. And as Joe mentioned, please do give us your feedback. We actually have scheduled to be determined or to be announced on the schedule for this year. Worked it in there with the hopes that y'all would give us some feedback. So let us know what you need, what you want, and we'll be happy to present that.
Yep. And Alicia asked a question. Alicia, when you get a link to the deck, the link for conference information will be live. So you'll be able to click on that and you'll be able to get the additional information. Okay. And I think that's it. So everybody, thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day. And thanks for being, a wonderful part of the Agile family.